All right, Kaz, here we are, episode 1 of the This Is Raleigh podcast. You ready?
I'm ready. G'day, everyone.
Yeah, well, I've got my coffee ready because we've got lots to talk about. Last year, we started our This Is Raleigh blog. We recently started our YouTube channel, but a podcast is something else we've always wanted to do to share our stories and our love of all things Raleigh for those visiting and those living here like us, because Raleigh is just one of those places. Now, people that know us are probably sick of hearing us talking about Raleigh, but we've got lots to share.
Yeah, we do. And, Raleigh's just one of those places, when you visit a place and you feel like so connected, you don't really have big plans, you don't really know much to do there. There's no top tourist attractions or anything like that. You kind of go without any expectation and you let it unravel, and you go for a wander down the streets, you go and talk to the locals, find out the best places to go, chat at restaurants, all that kind of thing. And then suddenly you realise, wow, this is one of those really amazing travel experiences I didn't expect, but I'll remember forever. And I have this kind of warm and friendly feeling. Well, that was Raleigh to us. That was the experience that we had, and we fell in love with it as soon as we arrived here. And look, here we are, 14, 15, 16 even years later, sharing a podcast about it. And so that's what we want this to be about. So whether you're a traveller thinking of coming here or considering moving here like we did, or maybe you're a long-term resident who's just gotten a little jaded, we can help you fall in love with the city again, because we see this city with magical eyes and eyes of a traveller, and we're going to share more of that through this episode. But whoever you are and wherever you're coming from, we're really glad that you're here.
Yeah, I guess we've got a new perspective. We've actually moved here 3 times, and the place just keeps drawing us back in. So there must be something special. We first moved here in 2004, in case this is the first time you ever listened to us, heard about us. And yeah, like I said, we've moved back 3 times now, back and forth from our home birth country of Australia, as you can tell by our lovely southern accent. And yeah, it just got under our skin from day one. We come here with no expectations. We'd never heard of Raleigh before we moved here. We're going to talk about that story shortly. But it's just one of those places. We've travelled to over 50 countries, we've lived in 5, and we've chosen to put down roots here, and we're going to share all about our reasons why.
Yeah, never in a million years did we ever dream we'd be doing this. We had our life plans and it just involved travel. That's all we wanted to do. We just wanted to travel anywhere and everywhere. And so we set out, we've been doing it nomadically pretty much for 23 years, living in different countries. And we never really, I'm pretty sure I speak for you as well, but never really felt like we belonged anywhere. It was like we were always roaming, went to places that we really loved, but never sort of had that belonging. Even I never felt that way, even in my own country, Australia. And I didn't understand what that meant until I came to Raleigh through really weird turn of events, just freak occurrences. We end up in this place called Raleigh we'd never heard of before, and instantly both of us felt like we belonged here. So it was very uncanny.
I guess happened. We've always had itchy feet, and through all our travelling and stuff, being from Australia and part of the Commonwealth, we pursued the working holiday visa. It was a way for us to travel and live in other countries. So we lived Kaz, straight out of university, lived in London for 2 years teaching. Then we got married. We lived in Dublin for a year. We lived in Bangkok teaching English. And of course, we lived in the US for 4 years here in Raleigh when Caroline was teaching. And that was just a way for us to immerse ourselves in a place and a culture and then continue to travel. But when we hit the age of 30, those work visas ran out through the Commonwealth countries. So we're looking for another opportunity. And that's when we were presented with that opportunity to come and live and teach in the USA.
Yeah, and so ever since then, in 2004, we've been on a mission and a journey to find a way to live here permanently, and finally we achieved that last year, believe it or not, an amazing extended process to get green cards, but we did. We received them last year, and so now we're finally settling down in our 40s and finally settling down, sort of. We're still going to travel and stuff. And now we're just moved into this new stage of our life where we're like, well, hey, we just love Raleigh. Everyone knows we love it. We're passionate about it. Let's just start something where we can share it and, really open up the magic of the place to many different people.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we've been to a lot of places, but there's a difference between visiting a place and living in a place, which I say to people all the time. And even from day dot in 2004 when we first come here, we've always said that Raleigh's not too big, not too small. Like we grew up just outside of Sydney, a big city. You lived in London for 2 years. We lived in Dublin. We lived in Bangkok. You can't get any crazier and bigger cities than that. But Raleigh is, it's got a small town feel, but big city options. And that's what we loved. And the other thing we love is it's not touristy. I mean, we love visiting tourist places, but it's not like LA or Orlando or New York City where there's a lot of tourist stuff going on. Raleigh's just more livable, but there's also plenty to do. Like even though it's a state capital, it's not sleepy. Well, especially in the last few years, it's grown a ton, which we'll talk about in maybe other episodes or this episode. But yeah, not too big, not too small. Small town vibes, big city options, and just the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, it's such I love that it's not too big of a city, and I do worry with the growth that's happening in this, lately over the past couple of years that it may get too big, and for me it's just the perfect size. We have such great access to restaurants, various cuisines, the nature and outdoors experiences here are excellent. And so I just love that. I love the small town vibe. I know when we first moved over here and when my parents first came to visit, we're walking around downtown with my parents showing them around, and my mum was like, oh my God, I just can't believe it. There's no one walking around. It was in the middle of summer, and if you know Raleigh, it gets stifling hot, so everyone's kind of hiding in air conditioning. But I was like, that's what I love about this place. You have, all this access to stuff, but it's so laid back, which is kind of, we connect to that being an Australian. We like the slow pace. We lived in Thailand for some time, so we got very used to the Southeast Asia vibe, was just kind of chilled out, the best way to be. So we love that about that here, and we hope it doesn't get too hurried,
Yeah, but when your parents first came here, we're talking like back in 2005 or whatever.
No, but when they came back a couple of years ago, they said the same thing when we took them downtown.
Yeah, the downtown has, if you're from Raleigh, you will know, downtown, especially the Fayetteville Street area, has grown a ton. When we first moved here, it was still like a pedestrian street, and it was really sleepy. And it's more of the officey area at the time, and just, Monday to Friday, business type people. But we'd never go down there on the weekends. But now, every weekend, we're almost in downtown Raleigh in the Warehouse District area. But all right, so where are we going to start? We're going to go back to how we ended up in Raleigh initially, our story, or what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, let's explain that, because I know, it's the question we get asked by everyone from everywhere. Why on earth Raleigh? Like, how did you end up there? And it's kind of so random that you ended up there and that you've decided to live here permanently, especially when they find out that the last place we were living in Australia was Burleigh Heads on the Gold Coast, which is absolute paradise. We were actually living across the road from the beach. I mean, you couldn't get a better or more beautiful lifestyle. But there was more that we wanted, and as we said, really basically it was just we felt like we belonged here. But yeah, so let's take it back. It was all the way back to Dublin, really, that started it.
Dublin Island. We were living in Dublin for a year on our working holiday visa. Kaz was teaching elementary school. I was working in construction, and like I said, it was we'll just turn 30, and that was the end of our working holiday visas through the Commonwealth country programs, and we're looking for a way to continue our travel dreams.
Yeah, and look, this is just really so bizarre how this happened. I mean, when I first met Craig, on our very first conversation.
I used to drive you crazy.
Maybe it was a couple of conversations after that, but I learned immediately who Jerry Rice was. So you can kind of get the feeling then that Craig was a bit mad on NFL and all things USA. And I didn't really have many big dreams to visit the USA at the time when I met Craig, but Craig did. He was mad on it.
Quick test, quick quiz. What number is Jerry Rice jersey? Come on now.
49. No, 80.
He used to play for the 49ers.
Yeah, that's why I got the thing confused.
It's Jerry, the man, the GOAT.
Yes. So I knew, okay.
Can't believe you slipped up on that.
I know, I was like getting something mixed up in my mind. But as soon as I said 49, I realised, hang on, that's the San Francisco 49ers. But
that'll do.
Yeah, so that kind of opened. So I was like, okay, well, Craig really wants to go to the USA. Craig really wants to live there. And then I started thinking, well, yeah, that would be really cool because we love living in other countries. That's the thing we love most about traveling. But we couldn't get here. There was no way to live in the US. There was no
I think there was
working visas.
I mean, there probably was if you had your own company or you got sponsored by a big company, and that was nothing really in our future.
No.
Otherwise, it was like a 90-day tourist visa waiver system, or I think there's a 6-month tourist visa you can get if you apply for it. But other than that, no.
But none of those options applied to us. I don't think we could really get them. So, but anyway, my point was we thought there was no way that it could happen. I was teaching at a school in Dublin. Best teaching job I've ever had. We've got some podcast episodes if you're really interested in about how we've lived and travelled around the world over on Why Travel Blog, which goes into all the different places we've lived and how we've made it work. But
quickly, best job in the world because your interview was in a pub with the principal.
With the principal.
That's the Irish for you.
That's the Irish. He's like, come for an interview. I'll meet you at the pub. I'm like, sold. I'll take the job. But he was fantastic. Yeah. And that was such a great job. I was teaching Irish minority children in small group instruction and foreign English as a foreign language. And so it was fabulous. But for one day, I don't know why, but in the staff room, lying on the table was a Teachers Union magazine. If anyone has seen a Teachers Union magazine before, you know they are not interesting at all.
Oh, you must have been bored this lunchtime flipping through that.
No, but see, I didn't even flip through it. I thought, I'm going to take that home for couch reading at home. Why I did that, I have no idea, because I'm definitely not interested in reading that on the couch. So I took it home, didn't touch it, and then, I don't know, a few days later, I found it on the floor in the living room, and I truly must have been very bored because I started flicking through it. I didn't read anything but flicked through the end, and there was a little teeny tiny orange square advertising for teaching in America. And I was like, oh, hang on a minute, that's interesting, something I've never heard of before. I'm going to look deeper into this. And so there was like I don't know if they had websites back then, but there was a number or something. They must have.
Question. Of course they did.
They did. I was just being silly.
This is 2003, not 93.
Yeah. Right. So I was like, okay. And I'm like, Craig, look what I found in this magazine. Like, I think this is something that I could possibly do. I think I could apply for this and we could teach in the USA.
Yeah, I remember seeing it, just the headline, teach in the USA or live in the USA.
No, it was teach because that's why I knew that I could do it.
Instantly the ears prick up, the eyes open and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
What's this about?
So we did. We looked into it and sure enough, it was an opportunity we'd never heard of before, but one that we could take up on it's called a cultural J1 visa. So the idea behind that visa is that someone from another country will come over in some kind of work environment or aspect and have the experience over here, share their culture with Americans while they're here, and then return to their home country and share the American culture back to their home country.
Yeah.
So I was going to do that from a teaching perspective.
So what was the name of the company and where were they located?
And here is where all the dots start to connect. So the name of the company at the time was VIF, Visiting International Faculty. It's now called Participate Learning. And it was founded by two brothers who had travelled on study abroad programs. I think they may have done work abroad, I'm not sure, but they also had done a lot of travelling. Mm-hmm. And through that had experienced the value of global education. And so they realised that at the time, 20% of Americans only had a passport and so many didn't travel. And particularly they knew a lot of children in schools just would never get the opportunity to travel and not get that exposure to other countries. So they came up with the idea of hiring foreign teachers to place into classrooms in the USA, and those foreign teachers could then expose the children to other cultures. So fantastic program and perfect for us and the lifestyle that we've lived and our views on life and what we were doing with our life. And they were based in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Tar Heels.
Yes.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and David Young was one of the founders and his brother, it escapes me my name.
I know, I've just had a brain explosion. It will come to me.
But David Young, he's
still the CEO.
Yes. And yeah, so I just want to talk about the application process because this is just typical of our lives at the time. It was not easy.
It was nuts.
It was a lot of almost a year, or probably a lot of months. And considering the fact that we were living in Ireland at the time and getting ready to leave and head off for a 6-month backpacking trip through East Africa, also complicated things. But yeah, I remember you applied when we were in Dublin. I remember, like, we were living in this apartment complex in Dublin. It was probably like 12 units. Like, I think it was an old house actually split up into 12 units. We didn't have a phone in our apartment at all. And I'm trying to think, did we even have cell phones back then?
Not back then,
No, we didn't have a cell phone, and we didn't have a phone in our apartment.
Blissful.
There was a community phone in the hallway downstairs near the front door that everyone would walk into, and you'd have to listen for it to ring and to see if it was for you. So I remember you doing your first interview with VIF on that telephone, and from there, that was step one. And then you had an interview in Cape Town, face-to-face interview in Cape Town with a representative from VIF, because they recruited teachers from different continents around the world. So they had one position in Cape Town, and we were in Cape Town. You organised to have an interview there. Then we had another one. You had another one in Sydney, another interview, and we went to it was like a few-hour like information session. I think they played a video and had someone speak and all that sort of thing. So you had the phone call in Dublin, the interview in Cape Town, South Africa, another interview in Sydney, Australia. But in between all that, you're just going crazy, chasing up documents, references. You share. Like, it was a lot to it.
Yeah, and look, this is really important. Learn from my mistakes, guys, and from my lack of knowing. But if you are planning on travelling in other countries, really be very on top of your paperwork. And I was very, just lackadaisical about everything. And at this stage, I had taught in London. I had worked in Dublin previously before I met Craig. I had taught in Sydney, taught in Bangkok. So what I had to gather together for my application process was police checks, statement of work, and work references from all those places I had worked. I'm trying to gather all this information from Africa. It was a nightmare. This is Africa in 2003. You thought dial-up was bad here in the US 15 years ago. You have no idea. In Africa, it would take 5 minutes literally to load a page. It was extremely challenging to get all of that documentation for the application process. But if you want something bad enough, you'll do it.
Yeah.
And we did manage to do it, but I did have to provide a lot.
And mind you, we're moving around a lot of the time. Like, it wasn't like we're living in Cape Town, South Africa, and you message someone in London or Bangkok as like, send me these documents to such and such address. Like, we were on the road, like living out of our backpacks.
Yep.
So that made it even more challenging. Plus 2003, like you said, the internet and keeping control of all your documents is probably a lot easier now with like software programs and, what have you online. But back then, I don't even think I had an email address.
Yeah, we did, but Yahoo, I think. I don't know what we were doing with all the
But you didn't have your smartphone and nothing like we have access to today, so that was extra fun. But yeah.
Yeah, it was tough, but we did it and we got accepted and into the program, and we got to put down a few choices of places where we wanted to live, and we didn't. They were only limited now they're only doing South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, but at the time they did do quite a few more states, and so we put down Colorado as our top choice because we thought that would be a cool, different experience for us.
Yeah, by memory, I'm thinking. What states they had available. But yeah, from the travel perspective and the lifestyle experience, we thought Colorado would be amazing to live.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to live in Denver for some reason.
Yeah.
But big city, close to the mountains, lot of sports. But yeah, considering it's based in Chapel Hill, most of the jobs were in North Carolina, Virginia, and South Carolina.
Yeah.
And you didn't have a choice. You basically said, I'm an elementary school teacher. I'm just happy to get a position somewhere. Yeah,
I mean, you could put your preferences down, but basically it was what school wanted you and where you were placed. And so, I was placed in South Smithfield Elementary in Johnson County. So that was a really different experience. And I had, we moved over here and we were scouting around looking for a place to live, and we realised, knowing who we were, that Johnston County was going to be too small for us to live there. So I was like, okay, let's live in Raleigh and I'll commute every day. I was going against the traffic. I'm used to commuting. I thought it was like 40 minutes of bliss every day, my own in the car, driving there and back. So that was a no-brainer, really.
Yeah, nothing against Smithfield and Johnston County. I mean, we met some lovely people.
Yeah.
Been down there a ton. It's grown a lot. We enjoy going down there all the time now. But at the time, we were kid-free, fancy-free. We knew we were going to be in Raleigh, like out and about the nightlife every weekend. So you thought, we're used to commuting growing up. We used to commute like over an hour into Sydney every day for like 10 years. So you thought, 40-minute commute down to Smithfield is nothing. And like you said, against the traffic. So that worked out great. But I just want to go back a step, and like I said at the start of the podcast, we'd never heard of Raleigh before. No. And when I think of North Carolina, I'm like, I've obviously heard of Charlotte and the University of North Carolina because of, MJ, Jordan. Of course. Even though basketball is not big in Australia, well, it's grown a lot, but
it's Michael Jordan.
Back in the day, everyone knows Michael Jordan and UNC. So, but other than that, maybe the Outer Banks and Nicholas Sparks books and movies, maybe. But other than that, we didn't really know much about North Carolina. Never heard of Raleigh, even though it's a state capital. But yeah, going back to Dublin, 2003, we're watching American Idol, and Raleigh locals are going to appreciate this story. There was come up to the final, I think it was the final 3 or the final 2 in American Idol, and when the contestants, they take them back to their home city. And one of the finalists that year happened to be a guy by the name of Clay Aiken. Raleigh's one and only Clay Aiken. And I remember, they went back to Raleigh, back to his family and friends, and I'm almost certain they had a function or a get-together in what it used to be called the RBC Centre. It's now the PNC Centre, where the Carolina Hurricanes play hockey and the Wolfpack play basketball. But yeah, I remember that. That's the first time I've ever heard of Raleigh. And funny enough, here we are.
Yeah, I think if anyone's a Raleigh transplant, I think that's an important fact you need to know. Mm-hmm. This is home of Clay Aiken.
I don't know what Clay's
Not
up
Michael
to these
Jordan,
days.
Clay Aiken.
I'm sure he's still singing the tunes, maybe doing Christmas music. I don't know, or Broadway stuff. But yeah, he was cool. It's cool at the time. But yeah, and it turns out actually a lot of North Carolinians did well on American Idol.
Yeah,
Chris Daughtry was one of your favourites.
Yeah, I loved him. He was great from Greensboro.
Not sure what happened to Fantasia, but there was another one. Was the name Kelly from North Carolina, I think.
I don't know, but there was Scotty
McCreery. Scotty McCreery. You know,
from Ghana.
And actually, I don't know if you follow us on Instagram, on social. I recently went to Clyde Cooper's barbecue in downtown Raleigh the other day, and they've got like a Hall of Fame, famous people that have been in there, presidents, whatever. But of course, there's Clay Aiken and Scotty McCreery. So go check them out.
There you go.
Besides the awesome barbecue.
Classics. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the first time we ever heard of Raleigh, and then, fast forward from that application and we ended up in, you ended up in a hotel for, a week-long orientation?
It was close to a week, maybe a little bit under it, but yeah, that was great. They had an orientation to introduce us, and that was, I've shared this story so many times because I just don't know how to really explain to people what it is about Raleigh, but it was just so weird, and it's so weird because, as I mentioned, never felt like we belonged anywhere, never really understood what that feeling was. And I arrived after a long flight from Australia to Raleigh. It's like one of the most traumatic things you can do is fly from Sydney to Raleigh in one stint.
Was it via San Francisco?
Via San Francisco, and we nearly missed our plane. So we were doing the typical arrive from Australia mad dash between flights, you're connecting flights. It happens almost every time, but there's all these teachers, just raw Australian teachers running through San Francisco airport with their luggage trying to get on the flight, but we made it just. But yeah, so arrived in Raleigh. It was dark, late at night, and jumped straight onto the shuttle bus to the hotel. And as we said, this was the first time I'd been to America. I'd never even been to America before, Craig had. I hadn't even stepped foot on the ground yet, literally just into the shuttle bus, and was driving down the freeway to the hotel. And I looked out the window and saw all the pine tree forests. And I just had this immediate feeling wash over me that I was home. It was uncanny. This feeling was just unbelievable. And that feeling has never left me.
Well,
like that was 2004, never left me.
Your name is Caroline, after all. And what did your mother used to say to you?
No, I used to say to my
you used to say
mother,
to
because she used to listen to that Carolina song by, I think it's James Taylor. And
Sing us a tune.
Gone Carolina in my mind. I think it's that one. It might be another one. But anyway, and I used to say to her, oh, Mum, I should live there in the Carolinas because my name's Caroline. But, so it's destiny.
Sweet Carolina. Yeah, okay, stop.
One of my favourites. Sweet Caroline.
Yeah. I remember, now the fact that, you'll talk about this for a second, but you were going to an orientation through the company, and there was something I couldn't be involved in, obviously. So I visited a friend in San Diego for 3 or 4 days before I flew out to Raleigh. I remember you calling me on the phone and just saying, like your hotel was based out in Durham at the time, and you very close to Duke University.
Very close.
I remember you saying you were walking through Duke University and
so
you
beautiful.
saw the football stadium, Wallace Wade Stadium, and you're like, I remember
Wow.
your enthusiasm in your voice and like, Craig, oh my God, it's just like in the movies, like I'm just this university, this college life, it's amazing. You're going to love it over here.
Yeah. And I just randomly stumbled on Duke because I just went for a walk out of the hotel. I had no idea where I was. And then just came upon Duke University, and I immediately recognised it from Dawson's Creek because they shot some.
Did you see,
because it's the Gothic buildings, it's so unusual.
Yeah. Did you see Pacey?
No, I tried to find him, but
Joey?
he must have been in class. But
memories.
yeah, so I was like, oh wow, this is amazing, and because I mean that university is just beautiful.
I mean, like if you know us, we're big Tar Heel fans, so I don't like giving Duke a rap, but even though we have a site based on Raleigh, we've been Tar Heel fans long before we started This Is Raleigh.com, just quietly. But yeah, so Duke's a bit of rivalry, but their university it's spectacular. It's very impressive to see, especially that chapel's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Something you see like in the UK or Europe.
Yeah,
so,
gorgeous.
Yeah. But other than that, the teams aren't that much. But yeah, so you get excited about that. And just from that orientation, one story, you tell this quite often, the speech from David Young when he was explaining life in the USA and what to expect. One of the things he mentioned.
Yeah, I mean.
That you're not here to.
Yeah, his speech, I still hear his speech, a lot of what he said now and remember it vividly. But he just, said to us, you're here and there are things that are going to annoy you talking about, life in the US or teaching in the US, how it's going to be so different. And, he was coming from an aspect, if anyone's travelled or lived in another country, the idea of culture shock. When you do arrive, you go through kind of like a honeymoon period where everything is so new and wonderful, and then you get used to it and suddenly you start getting upset about things because it's so different to home. And it's just a culture shock experience that you have to progress through. But he was like, you are not here to change things. You are here to just do your role as a cultural educator and just to enjoy the culture and have fun here and just let it go. Like it's not your responsibility to change things. Yeah. And so that was like really powerful to hear that.
Yeah, and back in the day, they had teachers coming from all over the world, South America, Central America, Africa, Australia, New Zealand, the UK. So, and obviously one of the frightening things for a teacher or someone new here is the driving situation on the other side of the road.
Oh, yeah, he said that.
Out.
I know, and that was one thing he said too, which was really eye-opening. And because I was really worried about driving on the other side of the road, because in Australia we drive on the opposite, and I'd never done that before. And he was like, okay, so put your hands up, if you're scared of teaching here in the US. And so the whole room puts their hand up. And then he's said, well, hands up if you're like scared of driving here. And I don't think as many people put their hands up. And he was like, okay, so that's what you should be afraid of because that's the thing that's going to could possibly kill you or cause some serious injury.
Yeah.
He said that's what you should be worried about.
Okay, so you were placed in South Smithville Elementary School in Johnson County.
Yep.
Just quickly, what was it like meeting the teachers there for the first time, meeting your students? What grade did you teach? And a few differences from teaching there versus like Sydney, London, etc.
Yeah, so it was a big change, and I was really very nervous about it, and I didn't really know what to expect. And you have all this nervous feeling. You're like, what is it going to be like? Am I going to fit in, etc.? And so I was in the 5th grade, and my first day there, I was in my classroom. I hadn't really met too many people yet. I'd met the principal. They'd showed me around and introduced me to a couple of teachers. But I was in my room, and then in comes Mary. I didn't know it was Mary at the time, but Mary was my colleague, and she walked in the door and, Caroline, it's so great to meet you, and just gives me this massive bear hug. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in the right place. Mary's awesome. And so Mary and I became really good friends. But that day she was chatting to me and she said, so Caroline, do you like wine? On Friday she lived beside the school. On Friday afternoon, some of the teachers come back for a glass of wine. Do you think you'd like that? And I'm like, Mary, I'm in the right place, yes.
Oh, pick me. How did she know?
She knew. So everything was destined, right? I was destined to teach alongside Mary. But
teachers around the world are probably saying, oh, staffies at the end of the day or end of the week. Bring it on.
Yeah, I mean, you needed it. But, yeah, I mean, it was great. So I was at that school for 2 years, and Mary was my colleague but also my mentor and my friend. And, I spoke about culture shock before, and because we had lived in other countries, we were very aware of culture shock, and America is quite similar to Australia in a lot of ways. So I thought, I'm not going to be – culture shock's not going to get me this time. I'm going to be fine. And from a living perspective, culture shock didn't at all. We came here in the honeymoon phase and haven't really left it. But
we grew up in Australia watching movies in America, listen to the music videos, the fashion, the sport, everything.
Everything.
So that's not that shocking, no.
No, but I did experience what I call educational cultural shock. And this is what culture shock does to you. I was in the principal's office talking to my principal in tears because it was so different, and I was in quite a challenging school, and I was having to understand this new concept of standardized testing and the pressure of it and the importance of it, and I just felt so overwhelmed. And I had, a lot of my students were – I was teaching 5th grade. They were 1st or 3rd grade level with reading and math. And I was like, what can I do here to not only just help these children learn and grow, but to get them to this place where I was forced to get them to be able to pass 5th grade. And so that was really tough for me. And I kept hearing David Young's words, you're not here to change things, you're not here to change things, because I kept wanting to change it. I kept wanting to say, this is not right, this is not right that we're doing this to these kids when they don't know their multiplication tables and they can't read. We should be just like helping them to do that. And so my principal was very good. He left chocolates in my cubby the next day to help me feel better. But he was really good. And I think it was at that point that I did remember David's words, and it was like, okay, I can't change this. What is it that I can do to just adapt and work my way through it? So what I did, which really helped me, was I introduced and which was what I thought was part of what I was being there, this cultural education thing, which was getting lost amongst the to-do list and the curriculum and the pressure. So I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a cultural study on Australia, and I'm going to get the kids in the class to create projects on different parts of Australian culture and put on a big exhibition for the school. And so we did that, and it was awesome, because these were kids who had never really felt before, that sense of achievement and accomplishment. And so we set it all up in the school gym, and they had their projects all on the wall. Outside we had games of cricket going. They had like a learning Australian slang area, I think. Inside we had taste testing, like we got jars of Vegemite,
Yeah, I remember
Lamingtons.
I remember you baking in our kitchen.
Oh my gosh.
Anzac biscuits, which is a famous biscuit in Australia.
Lamingtons
and stuff like that.
Oh, I
Maybe
think we
fairy
may
bread?
have. Yes, the
Fairy
kids
bread?
loved fairy
If
bread.
you don't know what fairy bread is, it's basically bread and butter with
Sprinkles. We call them hundreds of thousands.
There's sprinkles on top. Something you'd take to a kid's birthday party.
Oh my gosh.
Not great for the teeth.
No, kids
the
love
sugar
it.
rush, but yeah.
Yep, kids
Fairy
love
bread. There you have it.
Yeah, so that was awesome. And that was really just me trying to cope and bringing that cultural educational aspect while juggling, what was required of me from a sort of classroom,
Yeah.
traditional education sort of thing.
And how were the kids the first time you met them? Like their reaction to you as a foreigner, your accent, and how did you find them, like their behaviour and attitude towards school? And
I mean, they were full of questions, so curious, just so excited to have someone that spoke so funny in their classroom. I mean, as the whole purpose was the program was to expose children who wouldn't typically be exposed to other cultures. So that was them for sure. And so, I mean, it was challenging. It was different. I find teaching is challenging anywhere, really. You go other countries I've taught to, even in Australia, I taught in the most affluent school, and there were challenges within that,
Sure.
with managing classroom behaviour and all of that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I mean, I guess one thing that jumped out at us immediately is like we're in the South. The manners and their respect, like getting called ma'am and sir. Like I still look around sometimes, someone is calling me sir.
Yeah.
We're not used to that. It's usually,
No, we're not. Yeah.
mate or you or
Yeah.
whatever. But even troubled kids at home would still look up to a teacher and with respect and speak with manners and
Oh yeah, and that was something
someone of authority.
Yeah. They did. I mean, no, you could have a student having a crisis or a meltdown with you, but they would still call you ma'am in the middle of it. And I was like, wow, this is unusual. Where in Australia, I've been called some very colourful names before. But
And London, you taught in a very challenging area of London.
Yeah, the most challenging
breaking
region
up
there.
a lot of fights and stuff like that.
Kids throwing chairs at one another, that kind of thing. But, it's all a story to tell in the end.
I guess the only other teaching. Well, I even taught in Bangkok. I taught English as well, along with Caroline. Different schools, but the respect that they have for teachers there, like you're second
incredible.
in line to monks.
Second under monks.
That was amazing. But getting treated almost like a monk in Thailand and then getting
that
called a
was
sir
wonderful.
all the time over here, it kind of feels pretty special. But
Yeah, it was. Well, actually, I tutored a monk in Thailand too, in Bangkok too, which
That's
was
right.
a very unusual and unique experience. But
Okay, so 2 years at South Smithfield Elementary. We're going to wrap up episode 1 now. So you're on a J1 visa. I was on a J2 dependent visa, which allowed us to stay for 3 years. But we stayed for 2 years, went back to Australia. Then we come back for another 2 years in the same program, teach again, different school, or different schools and different classes. And then back to Australia again. And then we started I'm just cutting a long story short here, and started our blog in 2010, Why Travel Blog that is. It's been going for 10 years. And fast forward to 2017, we got a business visa to come to the US through our blog, and we leveraged that into a green card last year. So we are now permanent Raleigh residents.
Yep.
So we've got a lot to talk about in future episodes. We're excited to share what kept bringing us back to Raleigh, the changes we've seen over the years, why we love living here, our favourite things to see and do, tips for people moving here, getaways, all the above.
All the above.
Interesting
So
characters we've met, sporting events, concerts, festivals. We've done there's a lot we haven't done, but we've done a lot.
yeah, that's right. As we
So-
said, we love this place. We love the lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think
wanna
we,
share it, show it off.
We bring a unique perspective to Raleigh. Obviously, being from Australia, you can't get any, like, when I say we're from the South, people are like, no, this is the South. I said, well, We come from the deep south, way down south. You can't get any further south than Australia. I always say that to my Raleigh mates and they go, yeah, you're right. But yeah, travel to over 50 countries, as we said, lived in 5. I think we have a unique perspective, and why we keep coming back here, I'm sure it's still fascinating to people. They just don't understand it. And I mean, maybe we don't understand it sometimes too, but here we are.
But a lot of people have said to us, okay, I'm curious, because if you think Raleigh is so great with everything you've seen and done, there must be something here. And then a lot of people have actually moved here because...
Well, they have. And from day one, we always said Raleigh is America's best kept secret.
Yeah.
But I think the secret's out because there's over 60 people a day moving into Wake County. But yeah, stay cool, Raleigh. Stay cool. Keep the trees. Keep the nature.
Keep the charm.
I'm fine with growth, but sustained, manageable growth. And yeah, keep that charm. What the Raleigh people and people moving here loved it in the first place. Like, don't move from out of state wanting it to be like your state. Otherwise, don't move here anyway.
Yes, remember David Young's words. You can't change things. It's not your job. It's here to enjoy, embrace, adapt where you need to.
Yeah, welcome to Raleigh, y'all. Yep. But yeah, fit into Raleigh.
Keep your own flair and all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
progress and all of that, but keep what's special about it.
Totally. All right.
Well, thanks for listening.
Yeah, that's episode 1. We've got a lot to share. Subscribe to our podcast. Where can they find our podcast?
On all the platforms, iTunes, Spotify.
Plus go to thisisraleigh.com. Under the tab at the top is Raleigh Life, and on the drop down there will be a tab for it's going to host all our podcast episodes, so you can get it there. And we're going to upload this to YouTube as well, so if you want to watch it and listen to it,
Yes, please do, and please share it with your friends, and let us know what would you like us to talk about and share. We've got plans for interviews and all sorts of things, but tell us, what do you want to listen to most on this podcast? And we'll get to work on creating it.
Yeah, we're looking forward to interviewing. We started on the blog interviewing local Raleigh business owners and entrepreneurs and sharing their story with our community. And in the future, we're going to do that on the podcast as well. Any suggestions, tips, drop us a comment, let us know.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.